Good evening. Here we are back again. Yes, good evening to all of you. After that scintillating, very engaging session, it was actually written like a gripping screenplay. And thanks to our young friend Mitesh, and of course Raj and DK for educating us, for making it insightful, and it was also entertaining. So after that, we have another session coming up right now, which promises to be equally so and knowledgeable in terms of an overview that we hope to receive from the speakers and from the moderator's questions. So it's my privilege and my pleasure to call upon my very dear friend, Mr. Saket Chaudhary, who all of you know by virtue of his work. His latest film was Hindi Medium, which all of us loved. Before that, there was... Before that, there was Shaadi Ke Side Effects, which some people loved and a lot of people did not love. Before that, there was a very charming film that he did as his debut work, which was Pyar Ke Side Effects, okay, which turned Malika Sherawat into an actress, right? So that's Saket for you. Okay, Saket's also done extensive work in television earlier in reality shows, and I think Movers and Shakers he was a part of. That's okay, happens. Okay, that was a job that he was seeking. Okay, and before that he was trained at Pune University by great teachers like Samar Nakhate, etc. And he did the whole. It was a 2-year course, am I right? Yeah, 2-year course in Indian culture and performing arts and narrative traditions. So it's been a rather checkered past, as you can see, and his biggest claim to fame is that he's married to a very talented writer, which is what these directors seek. When they realize that they need to take their career forward, they start catching hold of, talented writers and start charming them and convincing them to marry them just to further their own careers. So that's Mr. Saket Chaudhary for you. So I invite him onto the stage. Saket, please come and take over.
Hi. I'm going to invite all the panelists here. First, I'd like to invite Deepak Segal. Deepak Segal is in applause, but I know Deepak from a really long time. In fact, I directed my first television show, and Deepak was the person who sort of mentored that show. And welcome, Deepak. Next, I'd like to invite a dear friend, a person who I greatly admired. I've not had an opportunity to work with him, Nikkhil Advani. Nikkhil, he's a great director, a great producer, and I think he sort of has a very clear understanding of how this medium has evolved over the last several decades. Thank you, Nikkhil. I'd next like to invite Nimisha. Nimisha heads Z. I think I've pitched to Nimisha several times and she's rejected all my concepts. Nevertheless, you never hold that against a platform or an executive. Please welcome Nimisha Pandey. Thank you. So those were very brief introductions, but we'll move on to the panel discussion. So Anjum, in his very flattering introduction, mentioned the fact that I married a writer. And I'm glad I did because honestly, with OTTs coming in, it's impossible to find any writing talent to work for you anymore. They're all engaged in several web series in development. So I think the first thing that we do have to thank OTTs is the amount of financial and creative resources that they have invested into the whole writing process. So I'll start the panel discussion with Deepak. Deepak, do you feel that OTTs are replacing television and films, or is it a completely new medium?
Its exhibition has, of course, turned a huge kind of a new wave. Cinema itself has actually suffered because of OTT to an extent. COVID, of course, was a kind of a boon for OTT. The thing is that OTT has allowed new content to come which would not have found place on in the commercial cinema screens. So yes, there is a certain new audience, you can say. I feel personally that cinema is outpricing itself as far as an avenue of people to go and watch. OTT subscription costs you less than a cinema ticket for one show. So I think, yes, there has been an expansion of audience. The audience is younger, they watch, they stop watching, they want to watch when they want to watch. Schedules seem to be anathema to people now. I mean, the same family can watch the same show at different times. So appointment viewing is something that has suffered. And I think the key thing is that the new subjects that have come forth without a formula to follow is the current play.
Nikhil, you made some of the biggest Bollywood films. You've also now directed and produced several big OTT shows. Do you feel that the mediums are complementary, or do you feel OTT is slowly eroding away certain kind of films that could be made before?
So first, I just want to explain, I'm not trying to be cool like Akshay Kumar. I've got diabetes, I can't hear, so I'm just wearing my AirPods. It's like it's a great app on the iPhone. You can actually make the AirPods into a hearing aid. So I'm not being cool. I can actually hear Saket. I've been on panels and just been nodding my head. But yeah, so is it eroding, our OTT eroding certain, yes and no. I think yes for sure, in the sense that, I think that OTT over the last 5 years has really grown, and where you would find it difficult to release, or really to release even a film like Hindi medium, for that matter, right? Let's take Hindi medium. I mean, it's a huge hit, but Irfan Khan, and would have been considered to be a middle of the road kind of, middle budget kind of a film. We have to understand that you have 52 weeks in a year. And at one point, people were fighting for showcasing, for theatrical space, so the small and the medium budget films were getting lost. You would get one show, you would possibly get, if you're lucky, you would get 2 shows. What OTT has done is basically said very clearly, and we were just discussing it inside, that don't have to go there, you can come to us, right? And Nimisha and all of us were just discussing inside that now the OTT is saying, no, you go first to the theaters and then come to us, right? Because at the end of the day, we were getting lazy, we were getting complacent, we were saying that we can make anything, and OTT wale utha lenge. So they also turning around and saying, hey, boss, you got to watch the quality. Mm-hmm. So I think, yes, I think what Deepak was saying is very true, that the OTT saved us during pandemic. But what happened after the pandemic? Nobody's going to the theaters. The bars are full, restaurants are full, malls are full, theaters are empty. It's a very simple notion, Saket. Value for money. Post-pandemic, the middle class family is becoming very watchful with how they are spending their money. It's not that they're not spending, but they want value for money. And Hindi, I'm not talking about pan-India, I'm talking Hindi content for cinemas is rubbish. Right? We need to pull up our socks. We started becoming too complacent. We started saying, if the star is there, people will come. They've rejected us. And now we've started basically saying, okay. So yeah, so I think it has eroded for sure, but it has also given an avenue to to films that normally would never be able to see the correct release, you know, and would never be given the correct opportunity when there is these, because we're not only competing with the tentpole films, big tentpole films of India, we're competing with Marvel, and we're competing with Hollywood, you know, and people are going. So yeah, so it's a bit of both.
Okay. So Nimisha, just in addition to that, so what I'd like to ask you is, just a fair question that Nikkhil asked me, and it's a question now that as a filmmaker and as a writer, it's sort of like something that we have to ask ourselves constantly कि अभी जो मैं picture लिख रहा हूँ, वो theater पे जाएगी या वो digital पे जाएगी? It's a question that at a very early stage of making we've started asking ourselves. So you're in a platform, you're right there at the apex of the decision making. So when, and I'm only specifically right now asking about films, is when you approve a film for digital, are there certain parameters or certain tick marks that you have by saying, okay, this is a film that we will acquire directly for a platform?
So firstly, is OTT eroding theater? I strongly feel no. Okay. What it's doing is, it's giving a tough competition and hence saying, up your game, right? And that's the thing, that all the mediums are ultimately fighting for the audience's time and money. And what you cannot do anymore, neither can theater, nor OTT, nor television, is take the viewers for granted. I mean, if there ever was a time that you could sort of be complacent about the fact that chal jayega, that time is long gone. You know, so that's just I really did want to share that. About how does a platform, or I can just talk about how would a Z5 look at commissioning an original film. So there are two parts to it, right? One is the direct to digital that happens because the film was actually made for theaters, and which actually basically happened because of the lockdown. And there was this whole appetite for content, and everybody just, you know, needed content. Viewers just wanted to watch anything. And to be very honest, the benchmarks became really low because we were not able to shoot, and, you know, there was a pipeline standstill. So absolutely any piece of content that made financial sense was bought. Now in a time where you're no more restricted by not being able to, you know, produce and shoot and everything, now the fact, again, if it's a film that has been made for theaters and is coming to OTT, that, you know, we did make it for theaters, but now we want to come to you, I would really ask why. Firstly, I mean, is it that you're now not confident of what the film can do? Or, actually, I don't know what or can be. that would just be, because it cannot now be about subject because you've already made the film, right? And then it becomes a question of right cost. In fact, like you just mentioned, that now a lot of OTTs are starting to say that, you know what, nahi chahiye direct to digital, aap jaiye, aap theater mein apni film release kariye, and then you give it to us, because we don't want to pay the obnoxious premium and that additional cost and make it direct to digital. So for example, one of our films which did release in theaters, ran its course, released on the platform, did phenomenally well. So the audience chose for perhaps to not go to watch the film, didn't seem worth it, or for whatever reasons. So that would be one. When it's about commissioning a new film, which is, you know, then would be called a commissioned original in that sense, that is usually about a story, a genre, a talent that can otherwise not be told or got on the platform, either in form of series or in form of an acquisition. Because then that caters to a specific need of the audience. So I hope that answers.
So Nikkhil, my next question is to you. You've made features, you've made series, Those series were not, even before OTT, they were not typically television series. They were more like OTT series, but at that time they were only television channels. And now you both directed and you've produced very prominent series. As a maker, as a filmmaker, is there creatively or in any other sort of way you feel a difference when you make content for an OTT versus a film or a TV series?
Completely. One is running a sprint, the other is running a marathon. Simple. The amount of the focus that you need to have when you're doing long form is very, very different.
Okay.
You have to be able to pace yourself. I mean, you know, you need to know that at the 300 meter turn, I'm going to be at this pace. At 200, I'll start increasing to the third gear. At 100, I'll move into fourth gear, and then I'll move into turbo when I'm just about to hit the position. So it's totally different. While a film is just honestly, and the comparison didn't exist when there was no OTT, right? It was always about film and whatever, right? Although I did make Salamesh, and that was like a OTT. It was 3.5 hours or whatever. I'm saying, yeah, but I'm saying it's totally different. So the choice of subject, what demands to be, you know, lots of people told us why did you not consider making Rocket Boys as a feature film? First of all, honestly speaking, do you want to watch a feature film about two scientists in 1940 to 1960? That was one consideration, right? Would you get the money to do that? Maybe you could do it. Maybe it would have been interesting to do, maybe like A Beautiful Mind or whatever, but also because the vast amount of information, right? The story was so large, you know, of these two gentlemen, that we just felt that it's important for us to make it into more into like a 2-season kind of a show. So it's very different. It's very, the approach the science behind it is very different. The approach is very different. The pacing is very different. So honestly, we are about to do a film right now. In fact, we're doing a film right now. We're just starting a film on the 19th of November, and with Abhishek Bachchan. And he asked me this question. He said, "Is it going to go to digital, or is it going to go to the theaters?" I said, "How does it matter right now? Why are we deciding right now?" He said, "Because, you know, Nikhil, I've realized that the way people are consuming content on their mobile phones and in their iPads and is very different from where, so the way you will take a shot is going to be different. The way you will push the trolley is going to be different. Because the pace of a cut on a 9-inch screen is very different from the pace. The same cut will feel very different on a 70-foot screen. So everything is different. Everything is different. The choice of technicians, writers, everything is different.
And I just want to sort of ask you this question, is that some of the most prominent series, which is Empire, Rocket Boys, Mumbai Diaries, they were all conceived as series, as web series, or were any of them transitioned from a film into a...
Always web series.
So it's because of OTT that these very unique and very novel stories were told?
Yes, absolutely. OTT has saved MA Entertainment, totally. I don't know about the industry, it has definitely saved us. So, yeah.
Deepak,
also it's liberating, right? It's liberating. I mean, to be able to tell the story of Babar, to be able to tell the story of Homi Baba and Vikram Sarabhai. And Vikram Sarabhai and Homi Baba are cool dudes in 1947. They're not, stodgy, ploddy scientists who you expect them to. They're Vikram and they're Homi, and they're falling in love, and they're failing, and they're failing, and they're failing, and then they're rising, and then there is, they can walk into the Prime Minister's office, they can call him Bhai, all that, that kind of stuff. So it was always conceived to be a show. And I mean, honestly, the more and more our 2023, 24 slate is being discussed, and the way we look at it, everything is going to be digital. Everything. So when we are talking to actors also right now, we are telling them digital.
But I have to add, Nikhil is one of those few filmmakers I've met who's not nostalgic about.
Sorry?
You're not very nostalgic about log theatre mein jate the,
Arey
picture.
yaar, please yaar.
But
Please.
you know, I do want to add that with the evolution now of OTT also, that whole thing of 9 inches is also evolving because the connected devices are on rise, right? I mean, it was initially that OTT was only consumed on mobile phones. It is, I mean, it's still more consumed on mobile phones, but still the connected devices, which can be a 75 inches screen, is on a rise. So who's to say really where...
Having said that, sorry Deepak, I'm editing on my phone. I'm not joking. I don't even go into the editing room. I tell all the directors, send it to me on Vimeo, I'll watch it over here, because I'm editing on my phone. It's silly now. It's just silly, this whole nostalgia of Steinbeck and all that nonsense. And I was there, I was Renu Saluja's assistant, yeah. So, but...
So Deepak, I wouldn't do that to Deepak. But Deepak, we're talking about OTTs sort of eroding theaters. But what about television? Do you think OTTs have also sort of taken away an audience or relegated television to the background?
No, television audiences are huge. I mean, my mother-in-law only watches television. She doesn't watch OTT. So because there's a certain rhythm viewers fall into, you know, that they, and as all writers would know, people latch on to characters rather than stories. So television gives them that character whose ups and downs, and however, you know, corny it might seem to some people, it's really engaging for a lot of people. And television audiences are really big, and they are still appointment viewing. I mean, they will sit together, and the households tend to use television as their Vogue and Cosmopolitan and, you know, their window to the world in a sense. OTT is still not gotten to that high glam of proper series, you know, or a huge feature film, which gives those kind of visuals to people. I think we are still, OTT is, because of its nature of storytelling, more important than presentation. I think, so television is huge. It will take some time before you rattle that.
So Nimisha, I want to take a cue from what Deepak is talking about. So obviously what Deepak is saying that there's a certain television audience and there is a certain OTT audience. So what is the OTT audience? What is the television audience? Can you sort of explain it to us in terms of socioeconomic or demographics? What is the audience here? Who's watching what?
Okay, that's a really tough one. But okay, I'll tell you why the lines are blurring and why is it a tough one. That while Deepak is completely right that the TV audience is huge and, you know, OTT is nowhere close to going to the TV audience yet. But what is surely happening is that Kumkum Bhagya and Kundali Bhagya are being consumed on Z5. Okay, so it is the TV shows, but that are being now consumed on the platform. So that's how subtly that shift is starting. Now, to begin with, the clear-cut OTT audience was the audience that didn't have anything to watch on television. I mean, that's oversimplifying it, but that's how it started. That they are not getting any entertainment on television. So the entire segment, so the entire male-skewed audience that television had ignored for decades, that was the lowest hanging fruit. So they were the early adopters in that sense. But now where we are, I often debate with people when they say that OTT is male-skewed medium, because that isn't quite true. Just because we have a lot of thrillers and investigative and crime dramas happening, that has nothing to say that more men are watching it. Also, it is, you know, it has made it far more fluid. Like, how do you really say? So while I will have the demographics that metros are watching my platform, right? But B towns are sitting in metros. So I think it's a fairly nuanced thing, and it will be unfair to say कि only metros are watching OTT. Sure enough, because of the penetration of internet and everything, it's more in metros. But your B town, C town, that population is there sitting in Bombay and watching it, right? So that's where I think it's lot more fluid. Having again said that, I think the classic television audience is yet to make that shift to the what we call, say, a A-word and a S-word. So a lot of actually across all the platforms, especially the platforms, actually only the platforms that are run by broadcasters, all the catch-up TV, unless you want it prior to the telecast, kind of is available on AVOD, right? So that's a free of cost.
Would you just define AVOD?
So AVOD is okay. So AVOD is the advertiser-led video platform, right? And whereas SVOD will be your subscription-led platform. So I mean, if it is the advertisers who are paying for that experience of you watching it, then and there would be breaks, there would be ads and stuff. But the audience is getting it free of cost. So that audience is still obviously like huge, far, far bigger, and has a major overlap with the television audience. The SVOD audience, the premium audience as we call it, that is actually paying for the content, that is far removed from the demographics of the television audience. That's very different.
Okay. So I remember a few years ago there used to be a film writer and there used to be a television writer. Now we also have a web series writer, which is a completely different sort of an evolved writer, and probably the most employed and the one who's making the most amount of money right now. I want to ask you, Deepak, that when you sort of commission a series or put it into development, what is it that you're looking for in a series? I mean, some of the writers here would like to sort of understand that at what stage and what idea are the ones that you would sort of say, okay, applause will make this into a web series?
I think there's a lot of gut which goes into it, because sometimes you get A crime series, B crime series, C crime series. You choose from a genre. So basically you should fall in love with the story. You should fall in love with the potential of that, how that story can render. So we at Applause, we engage basically with writers first. And I mean, I'm loath to say, but the author theory operates less in the web series space rather than, in cinema we leave it to the director to set up the whole thing, his writer, his this. In this, we also consider कि यार वो इस episode के लिए कोई अच्छा action director लाओ, because this is exactly like Game of Thrones is directed by really, the Battle of Bastards was shot by a specialist who shot fight sequences, war sequences. It was not like when we had this assistant director on ER who had came and spoke to us. He said in the West we choose directors. There are certain directors who are very good with actors and they leave the rest to the cameraman. Then there's one director who's very good with mise-en-scène but not so good with actors. So you need the showrunner there then. So we would rather lean on side of the person who has conceived, created the characters, seen their play out on pen and paper, rather than somebody who's looking at it from a perspective of texture or execution of the thing. Not that that person is not important, but in web series, he can be the best for that particular portion of the thing. The showrunner is the one who actually briefs actors abroad. I mean, so if they say, yeah, what did I do last? And he says, one sec, your mother died, so now you can't be cracking jokes, kind of thing. So that he's the one who keeps that track going. And the director is shooting the Battle of Bastards. So that he's doing that to so there are really specialized things coming up. Another thing, as Raj and DK mentioned, collaborative writing has become a big thing. It used to be there in cinema. Story sittings, as we used to call them, were always there. But now you really work with people, you tend to learn. It doesn't become one author's work, which is like a novel. So people bounce ideas. And this concept, which India never got into in a very big way, started with gag writers. In long-running comedy shows, there was one person can't come up with so many, jokes which hit the mark. So you had a bunch of gag writers who would feed in, from their experience, and the central guy would say, okay, my character can do this, my character can do that. So now it's come into other aspects of things. Research has become very strong because there's no formula. So actually, if I'm doing Mind Hunter, I really don't need to know that subject. I need to meet psychologists. I need to meet cops. I need to meet jailers. I need to meet, people who have lived those experiences and bring them to screen, so that aggregation of so many diverse things becomes very strong in web series.
Okay. Nikhil, you've interacted with writers across mediums. Is the experience of what Deepak was saying, this collaborative writing, the writer's room, the showrunner, I mean, you can also define these terms much better for our audience, and also sort of explain, is the writing process distinctly different for developing a web series?
Yeah, in the sense that I think that when it came to feature film or cinema writing, right, in the sense, you were used to, as a producer or a director, you're used to the writer saying, I'm going to go off, main chale jaunga. I can only write at 6 o'clock in the evening, have my Lagavulin, and then I get into my zone and then start writing. I think that in the case of web series writing, I think what Deepak is saying is absolutely right. There's a more regimented approach. That you do end up sitting, when it's a writing room, it literally is a writing room, right? It's not as if, yes, during COVID, the writing rooms were on Zooms, and it was online. Some of the best writing that we did for Rocket Voice was done online, because there were 5-6 people, and you don't have to bother about I'm coming 15 minutes late, vagera. I'm stuck in traffic. Irla mein abhi bhi traffic ho gaya, vagera. You don't have to worry about bother. Everybody was there. So actually, the process became very, very efficient. In the case, so it really is a writing room. The other thing with web series is, right, and Deepak and Nimisha, you can jump in the sense, it's multi-track. There's several tracks that are going on. It's not just, you're not just following one character. You may be following, like in the case of Mumbai Diaries, you're following about 10 to 15 characters, right? So one guy to be able to do that becomes quite monotonous, right? He doesn't know, because sometimes it becomes like, oh, but this character is doing exactly what this character was doing, right? वो चार episode पहले यही कर रहा था. So what happens is, when you are in a more robust kind of a room, then ideas are coming, and everybody's also watching out for the other person, or somewhere, and there are times when they are trying to compete with the other person, so it becomes, so a healthy writing room is a very, very efficient writing room when it comes to web series, right? When it comes to the long form, and so some of the best shows, you'll only I mean, people like us, when we catch up, we say, kya writing tha usme? Whether it is Big Little Lies, whether it is Mayor of Easttown, whether it is Mindhunter, and what Deepak said is again research. You would think that only a show like Rocket Boys would need research. No, they just did Criminal Justice, right? And Criminal Justice season 3, it deals with children and child rights, right? And abuse of children. You have to get it right. Right? In the social media world, everybody is basically there to make you look, but it's to catch you out. Yeah. Right? I know, because Rohan directed Criminal Justice. My wife runs a child rights organization for the last 20 years. They are best friends from school. And she said, listen, when she saw the trailer, she said, I'm watching, you better watch out. If you get it wrong, I'm going to come out, I'll file a PIL. She told him, right? But we are laughing. Trust me, should have filed a PIL. So I'm saying that the research has to be bang on, absolutely bang on. It's very essential. Especially in the big periodical shows, that the big period shows we are doing, that there's no question about it all. They'll stop it. They'll put up this thing, circle. Ye kahan se aa gaya? You know, that kind of thing. Yeah. So
I'm going to come back more on the writer's room to understand, how it functions, including the role of the showrunner. I'm going to come back. But first, I want to ask Nimisha. From what I gather, and my experience with OTT is limited, the first exposure to a concept would be the show Bible for you. Could you just take us through the sort of the approval process which puts the show into development, etc.?
So again, it varies from one platform to another, but I can tell you the process that after having gone through 3 platforms and having being exposed to various processes, which one do I champion and we are following at Z5. So writers / showrunners / producers, they first usually would send, so I tell them, don't send the Bible straight up. Send us like a log line, say a 1-pager, concept note of what the show is. The reason I usually say that is we are obviously doing multiple shows, right? There is an aggressive development pipeline. There is a very good chance that there is something that we are already working on, which maybe, say, have overlaps with what you're sending. So in an ideal world, I would really go that extra mile to avoid any sort of situation where you could, then feel that it's something that you shared with the platform. So also straight up getting invested into 50, 60 pages, it is also easier to first read the 1 and the 2-pager. So once that at the concept level, it is something which works for us, that's when we ask for a Bible. Now, not everybody has a ready Bible. That is another thing because of various processes in the industry. A lot of creative talent has gotten used to कि idea के basis पे इसको development में डाल देते हैं और फिर लिखते हैं ना. Now that's a double-edged sword, and then you will also feel bad about the fact that development took years and nothing went ahead, which we know that, keeps happening. But that's because, well, to begin with, you shouldn't have put just an idea level into an official development. So I then sort of, my team goes back and tells the producer or the writer to get us the Bible. When I say Bible at this stage, what I essentially mean is the world, the characters, the character journeys, episodic summaries, maybe not like very detailed out, even if it's just like a 1 paragraph, but episodic summaries and the promise of season 2. That's it. And that would be enough for us to judge the show. What we are doing at Z5 is that we are not putting things in development, we are straight green lighting stuff. So then I, again, go that extra mile and say, can you do the pilot episode?
Okay.
And then we say, come on, let's roll with the show. We align on a ballpark budget at that stage so that we are not going through the heartbreak of writing everything. Somebody may think it's restraining, but I think it's just better because you have the clarity of vision at that stage. And when you are writing, when you're putting the nuts and bolts together, you already know ki where does it need to land, right? So don't write out of whack, right? So that's basically is the process.
And Deepak, when writers come to applause, what stage do they usually come to you and pitch a show and say, this is something I want to make?
Various stages. Some people have complete projects. Some people have ideas.
Okay.
Some people have a book that they think they can adapt. And so I think there's no set format that they come with. So we sift through a lot. Normally people who have spent some time on it also have the first episode ready, so we get a chance to go through that. But as Nimisha said, in this web series space, at least the promise of a second season and a third season is extremely important. So you can't have a cracker first season and say, "Ah, both ye log jinda hain, to abhi inki kahani banegi." You have to be very clear what is going to happen in the following seasons, because that is what this game is based on. It becomes easier to do a second season if it's well charted out from the beginning.
And
Nimisha knows we're having a struggle on one.
Does Applause have a set format कि इस format में हम platform के पास लेके जाएंगे, or you will also go at different stages depending
No, we
on?
try to make a pitch doc,
Okay.
which has the story, which has an episodic structure at least, and a promise of the cast. Because initially we were not so, when we started off 5 years back, cast wasn't exactly, competent actors were there. A cast system is creeping into OTT now also, slowly. So it's easier to sell to Nimisha if I have a great known actor. So though I'm not saying that it's a caste system like one hero and that's 10 films coming with him. So there's a pitch doc which the writers of course make for us, and we pad it up with our visualization of it. That is where the showrunner becomes important, because the showrunner is normally the head writer.
Okay.
Who has conceived the show. Now maybe he's not very good at writing a fight sequence or the dialogues, but he has the show in his head. He knows where it's based. Is it in the hills? Is it in the desert? Is it there? Is it why? So his visualization becomes very important for us. They suggest actors who they think can render those parts. So it's a collaboration between the writing team and us initially. Now, just as an addendum, in today's age, it's not like the West where showrunners are not the directors.
Huh.
Many directors are showrunners, like Nikkhil was on one of our shows that we did together. He was the showrunner. So he had it all in his head. So we didn't have to ask 20 people about what, yaar, ye kya ho raha hai? He knew it. Yeah, this is going to happen, that is going to happen, this is going to happen. So that becomes the central, what the director does in a film.
Okay.
Even in that, if you look at it, fights are directed by somebody else, songs are directed by somebody else. So he's the showrunner in a film.
And Nikhil, of your different shows, is there a set format that you take to a platform and say, this is the document that will be a pitch, or it varies according to platforms?
No, there's a reason why it's called the Bible, yeah. Bible. We work very hard on the Bible. And when we haven't worked hard on the Bible, the shows haven't worked. It's about the Bible, right? And then, like Deepak was saying, the showrunner could be the head writer, or you could in the West, now where you have the category of first assistant director, associate director, chief assistant director. Now you have showrunners who are available for you to bring on board into the, could have nothing to do with the concept, the log line, the development process. But somebody who, like Deepak said, has basically, I'm doing a show on the Mauryas, on the Ashoka, right? And I've done Empire, but I know somebody else who's done a better job in that kind of position, showrunner. I hire the showrunner. This is my Bible. The Bible becomes, and of course that the person can use the Bible as a starting point, or basically say, fine, this is perfect, let's go. So for us, the Bible is absolutely important, everything. Because what it does is that when you've scaled up to this level, right, or you're trying to scale up to the level, there are only so many places I can be at the same time, right? And you need to have all your generals working off a plan, working off a strategy, working off a roadmap. That roadmap is the Bible, right? So like Deepak said, that there could be 5 directors for an 8 episode show. There could be 3 directors. In the case of Made in Heaven, Made in Heaven actually is the first show. Really, Excel always does things they are the pioneers, because they borrow very heavily from Hollywood, especially in the organization and infrastructure of a project. So in the case of Made in Heaven, Nitya was the showrunner, right? Did she have anything to do with the writing? Yeah, of course she was part of the writing room, but there were 3 directors. There was Alankrita who was directing, there was Zoya who was directing, there was Now there was Neeraj who directed, but earlier there was Prashant. So there were 3 directors. But Nitya had to tell them that, listen, this is where Arjun's character has left off in episode 2, because sometimes what happens is, like is that a director will come and say, okay, this is great, the scene is great, or the actor will say, listen, but I've interpreted the scene this way. Now the next director who's coming in needs to know. So the showrunner is constant. So like for instance, if you see, I think the greatest showrunner, in my opinion only, is Aaron Sorkin, right? So he is a lead writer. He writes everything, but there are directors who are coming in but the actors are not talking to the directors, or the actors are not talking to the directors in solo. They are talking with Aaron Sorkin. Aaron Sorkin, being the superstar that he is, will lose his shit if he finds out that actors have spoken to directors without him. So the showrunner is very important during long form. It's extremely important.
And the showrunner, and this was one of my questions. And I'll put this question out to everybody. Is the showrunner a slightly different kind of a creative force than a director or a writer? Or is it an amalgamation of the 2 skills?
So I think it's evolving still, right? It's evolved completely in the West. Over here it's still evolving. David E. Kelly, right, who possibly did Ally McBeal, and he's done Big Little Lies and all that. He would earlier be the creator. You would get created by credit, right? He's the producer. He's the guy who has basically thought about it, but he's not directing it. He's passed it, or he possibly will do the pilot episode. Possibly will do the big episodes that the platform, or in that case the studio, would expect him to do. But there are other directors who are doing it. But I think more and more now you will find over the next couple of years that there will be like when we were growing up, Saket, there was a star the assistants. We always knew that एक star Apurva Lakhya, right? मतलब star assistant था, उसने लगान किया है, right? We would like, oh, Apurva Lakhya, मतलब वो अपने आप को क्या समझता है, हम लोग भी कर रहे हैं, that kind of thing. But Lakhya was during our time, he was the assistant director to aspire to be, right? You will now start hearing about, and platforms will now start recommending, I think. They will start recommending, for this show, you should use this guy as a showrunner. Like they would often do for a line producer. He's a very good line producer, you should work with this guy. Or a very good EP, you should work with this person. I think now platforms will also be having when they get good experiences with showrunners, they'll say, use this guy as a showrunner.
So I will add to that is either a writer can be a showrunner or a director or a producer. What is extremely important is for the showrunner to have the sort of knowledge of the entire process. See, that becomes extremely important. Sometimes the challenge that becomes, and I especially say for this forum, for the writers to step up as showrunners, because you also should have had certain, even if not experience, but skill set, knowledge, to see the show run the course, because it is not going to finish in the writing's room, right? And that is an important thing for a showrunner, just like the director, if is acting like a showrunner, is important for that showrunner to be in the writer's room. It cannot be that showrunner just came in to play one small part and plugged out. He or she is really the one who is taking care and, going for that North Star.
So Deepak, just to clarify, the showrunner is not essentially the person who came up with the concept. That could be somebody else.
Yes.
The showrunner is not necessarily the person who will write an episode or all the episodes. So, I just want to define this because it's such a new idea that's coming out, sort of emerging. How would you define the specific roles of a showrunner?
In very loose term, it's a director who doesn't direct.
Okay.
So he knows every aspect of the show, right from writing to the post, but he need not direct.
Okay.
But he just knows it better than everybody else.
मतलब जब किसी का बैंड बजाना है ना, Deepak Segal has to call the showrunner. कि boss, I just saw the rushes. What's happening? Right? It's that. It's very clearly that, right? In the sense, and it works both ways. Like in case of Rocket Boys, Abhay wrote it. But he was so close to the material that sometimes when the platform would would react, he would just say, you know, so it becomes the showrunner's this thing to take him out for a drink. He doesn't drink, but and say, okay, yaar, lassi pee le, calm down. What they're saying is very right. You need to understand that this is how it is, and this has to play. And reverse, even reverse. When you want to push back to the platform, say, listen, you're not getting it. This thing is going to pay back in the episode 3. Just wait. So I think that bridge, right, but actually realistically speaking, the buck stops when it comes to specifically because it's so nascent over here right now. The buck stops with, because most of the producers, or like Nimisha said, producers or directors are the showrunners, right? They might be having other directors working for them, but the call will go to them, right? So call goes to Samir and Deepak in applause, right? When Nimisha is not happy with something, right? Am I right? So she may not even know who's directing. She may not even know. The meetings have happened with them, right? She may not even know who the director is, right? And that's great. But
Now, one specific thing, Nikkhil, I want to ask you is about multiple directors. This is also a very new idea. I mean, my experience, film में तो एक director होता था, वो पूरी picture बनाता था. Television में वो 50 episode करते थे, फिर director बदल जाता था. But there were never multiple directors operating. When there are multiple directors on a show, are they directing individual episodes or are they directing individual tracks? How does it work in your experience?
Well, in Patal Lok, it worked as individual tracks. In Sacred Games, it worked as individual tracks, right? Kashyap did one track and Motwani did the other track. In Patal Lok, Avinash Arun did one track and Prosit did another track. In the case of Made in Heaven, it was individual episodes, right? I think the first 3 was done by Zoya, then Aladkrita did the next 2, and I think the last 3 was done by Prashant. So it depends. Like in the case of Freedom at Midnight, we are really thinking about a couple of characters will be done by me and a couple of characters will be done by another director. Okay. And then when it depends on schedule or depends on who is coming to whose house, literally. Is Gandhi coming to Nehru's house or is Nehru going to Gandhi's house? कौन करेगा? किसका track है? Right, is important. So I think it can be anything.
Yeah. And I mean, another added thing to that combination can be taking from television leaf is like setup, right? So the first 3 episodes when the characters are still being set up, one director is doing it and then the other one is taking off.
And I think a lot of platforms, especially when you want to work with and especially when marquee shows and big shows, they will want the so-called director who they have somewhere or the other put their trust in to come in and do set the tone for the first episode and do possibly the last episode, which is going to go into season finale, etc., etc. So so I think this is evolving more and more. It's right now I think 90% or 99% of the stuff that is a single director is doing, but it is evolving.
And there the role of the showrunner becomes even more important for the consistency of the writing also and the consistency also of the directing also. To be able to sort of see that this is the tone, the performances.
So exactly, so that consistency is the job of the showrunner.
Deepak, I want to ask you, because Applause has done so many shows. And a lot of those shows have been adapted. So what criteria do you follow when you look at an international show and say, this will work well on an Indian platform?
One is that it should be a slightly more universal story, which can take place anywhere in the world. The second is it easy enough to put an Indian context to it? Third is, of course, the rest of it is the normal gripping, good characters, good set pieces, good action, good whatever it is. So in adaptation, we started off adapting to get off the blocks faster. We met a lot of partners and we really have flourished with Israelis and BBC and things. Actually, BBC Criminal Justice 2 is our own story. So now they are going to pay us royalty, I think, for that one. Because they didn't have a season 3. We made a season 3. So I think that partnership has really worked for us. And adaptations has become a word today. Hindi cinema is adapted since millennia, you know.
Unofficially. Unofficially.
Unofficially. But now when I adapt, people say, oh, original idea nahi. I said, original idea 3 saal lagte hain banane mein. This is a ready thing. Indian audiences haven't seen it because it was on a platform which is not, you know, patronized by them. So why not tell a good story in a way that is understandable to them? So that is our main criteria is great subject, efficacy in India or not.
And in your experience, have certain genres been better adapted?
Yeah, crime thrillers are easily adapted. This Is Us will be difficult to adapt. The context will become more and more. So there are certain things which are very milieu-oriented to a society and its position in the world today. But serial killer, war, that can happen anywhere. You know, I mean, maybe not in the same clothes, but it can happen anywhere.
Nimisha, one question that, and it's a question that is certainly important for makers, is that when we made films, there was a metric for success which was the box office. कि मतलब Saturday को Friday को इतना हुआ Saturday को और तब पता लगा कि picture चली या नहीं चली. In television, TRPs, with whatever the controversies around TRPs, but there was still a metric for success. On OTT, what is the metric for success?
Okay, there are various metrics. One, and which metric is more important for that particular piece of content depends on where your platform is in terms of growth or what simply was the objective of that particular piece of content. So one out-and-out metric for success is acquisition. So what we call acquisition is, was this show or film able to get a new person to pay for the subscription? Sure, it was a great show, but did it get, how many people did it get to buy the subscription? So new people, hence acquisition. Second one is engagement. So while it may not have got new people to buy the subscription and come on the platform, but the existing base, which is there on the platform, watched it and really enjoyed it, right? Because while there is a constant race to acquire, also it is as important to retain the consumers that you have acquired. I hate it when I say it, consumers, audience. Audiences that have come on the platform, right? So that becomes the engagement metric. And third one, which, and this is again something which I sort of believe in, is the perception. So there will be some shows that build the perception of a platform and hence haven't done so well on acquisition or engagement, but then you treat them as a social currency, you treat them as the perception maker of the platform, and hence you value it accordingly. Now, the cost of the content, the series or film, needs to make sense with respect to what it's achieving. So for example, I cannot possibly go crazy and do a show just for perception and like blow hundreds of crores of rupees on it, because it's just would not make business sense, right? So in terms of how valuable each of these metric is, acquisition, especially in the ecosystem and the world where every platform is trying to get to 100 million, becomes extremely, extremely important. But yeah, I mean, these three are the broad metric that I would say for us at Z5 matters. Also, see, the thing is that data is science, but interpreting it is quite an art. So it will also be very different for each platform. So I think it would be wrong for me to just broad stroke it and say that this would be for everybody. But I think this is a fair representation of most of the platforms.
Nikhil, now, I mean, this question on metrics is important because in films, the box office, it's not just about success financially, it's also a success as a maker, you sort of find your path. And box office became an audience reaction. You know, so like for example, in Shaadi Ke Side Effects, when it didn't do as well as we wanted it to do, I realized that maybe the time for urban romantic comedies is not great. I have to tell more rooted stories, etc. So when you've done web series, and a lot of them have been very successful, and I don't know which one has not been successful, so I'm not being able to think of one, but what is success for you in a web series? Is second season a success? What is the success in your terms?
Exactly what Nimisha said. I mean, I wait for her to call up and say drop off. Yes. It's a drop off rate and incremental subscribers, right? These are so it's a silly notion to think that you can get onto web series and you don't have to bother about box office, right? I mean, at the end of the day, there is a platform that is investing into your concept, and they are hoping to get returns. Now, like she said, whether the returns are subscribers or whether the returns is perception, they already when they are looking at the material that is coming in, they are already making they are very how do I put it, well-informed teams that are telling them this is going to happen, whatever. And also, I think that more and more research, is not research about the content, research about the testing, right? And this thing, oh, this tested like this test is going to do well over here, is not going to do well over there, etc., etc. So I think for it's very important. It's very important to be able to you wait, and you might not get the answer on the Friday, because you know Friday dabba ho gaya, khatam ho gaya, matlab will I get work on Monday or not? So that stress happens. But on Sunday you'll still get a call and say, yeah, people have come in, but they're getting off by the 12th minute of the third episode. Or if you're lucky, 12th minute of the third episode is very lucky. It's a good show, right? Most shows are going out in the first episode only. People are starting, not watching, and then. But actually speaking, it is. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. It's 28 days or something like that, or something. There is a 28-day gap where I can tell you really whether the show has done well or not, how it has performed on our platform.
For a verdict to come.
Yeah, for a verdict to come. Yeah, but I think that everything is about the second season. I don't think that there is a single creative director or single director of content in any platform that will look at your show if they don't know there's going to be a second season. The punt is on the second season. The first season is a given. Yeah, acha hoga. Now how to make it good? So you get a good actor, you get a good director, you get, so scale hai, ye hai, whatever, all that. Budget, it's fitting. But the punt is on the second season. It has to go into second season. If it doesn't go into second season, it means failed.
And Deepak, you've experienced a lot with TRPs. Do you feel these metrics, like TRPs, were very definite कि मतलब ये show चला या नहीं चला? Do you think these metrics are extremely defined and accurate to measure success?
They are pointers. You can go very wrong just blindly following metrics. So, but they are definite pointers. Okay, there is a sway towards this. This kind of audience is moving in. This kind of audience is moving out. We are getting interaction. Now with social media, it's become even easier. People are, so metrics is important, but as an indicator, not as a definitive thing. Though advertisers follow metrics very carefully, and their science of slicing and dicing must be even stronger than ours of demographics.
No, some metrics are very definite, right?
Yeah.
For example, you've launched the first season, and the completion rate, for example, that's there's nothing indicative. That's a very definite.
I'm talking about the TRPs he was talking about.
Right, that, yeah.
So if TRPs are anyway a sample of a humongous
But some of the biggest shows, right? I mean, Money Heist, Schitt's Creek, didn't work on TV. The minute they went on to Netflix, boom, it just went crazy, right? So it also now is about which audience you are, So even, like, I mean, Nimisha's job is very tough from that point of view that, okay, this show might work during this period of the year. Might not work during this period of the year. Because the mood of the audience is a particular audience thing, which is what we also do in terms of cinema, right? Ki matlab, National Holiday release kar dete hain. This is a family film, to Diwali pe release kar lo. This is slightly more distinct to minority, to matlab isko Eid pe aana chahiye. So I think everything is now evolving and like, as Deepak also, even the so-called caste system is coming into this thing. No, like, why can't we get a a young Bollywood actor, usko leke aate, why can't we do that? Why everybody is doing digital now, yaar. That zamana where they thought that it is, मैं failed actor hu tab मैं जाऊंगा. It's now it's become it's very, very myopic thinking.
I mean, with these metrics, Nimisha, what I want to ask you is also, I mean, because the kind of, I'm assuming, and I've never been exposed to the algorithms, etc. But with the kind of insight that you have, with everybody having an app, engagement, etc., do these metrics also determine the type of content apart from determining the success of a content?
Okay, data tells history. Okay, I mean, I do strongly believe that when it comes to the performance of the show and judging, that metric is absolutely solid. You can see it. But as far as looking for the next show, the slate, and all of that is concerned, I think data can only work, say, as a compass. It can just point you in a direction, and then it will have to be the gut, it will have to be the experience, the skill set, and everything that will then help you perhaps make that map. Because, I mean, how will the data tell you which show to make? Sure, we know that crimes seem to work a lot better, but also, I mean, it's something that did you really need data to tell you? Because if you're saying gripping stories, by default, a crime story is a gripping story. It's also far easier to write. Also, we have a lot more data telling crime is successful because we have done so many crime shows. We haven't done a lot of other genres. So, to answer your question, while we do keep data in mind to say that, something like this has not worked previously, or something like this has worked, so let's try and do more of that. But everything is still so nascent. Enough content has not been done across the kind of genres and tonalities and all of that possible to really have a definite thing ki ye to chalta hai aur ye to nahi chalta hai. And even audience, right? Right now, even the audience is growing and expanding at such a scale that you can only tell about the audience base that is already there on the platform. How are you really going to say with that much surety that the people who are not there on your platform, what will they watch? So, yeah, it is...
so, a lot of it is still instinct?
A lot of it.
No, I mean, I don't want to paint such a grim picture for the writers out there. The best shows actually worked against data. Squid Game, right? Look at this. Nobody could have said कि ये data point कर रहा है कि हम लोग को ये कर this show. Whether it is Squid Game, whether it is Game of Thrones, right? I mean, Game of Thrones has led to now shows being made at $1 billion an episode. Right? It's insane, right? So whether it's Game of Thrones, whether it's Squid Games, and HBO is that standard bearer, right? They basically say कि we don't care. हमारा content है, and we will put the content out, right? So they'll back a Succession, and they'll back a Game of Thrones, and they'll back White Lotus and all that kind of stuff, right? So they don't care. So it depends on what you're following, how you're following, where you're following, what. So and actually, if you see all the platforms, really at the end of the day, the things that you remember the platforms for are the outliers.
Yeah.
Right? The one guy who comes and boom. And then you say, hey, did you see this on Netflix? They've got a lot of other stuff that have actually possibly been commissioned based on data. And then there's one guy who comes over there. So it's still very much the outlier that we should champion.
Yeah, I want to add to that because White Lotus was basically a show that was commissioned कि COVID में क्या shoot कर सकते हैं. You know, that was the conversation, and it's become the biggest show. So, I mean, your point that yes, these are the outliers. Deepak, what do you feel in the ideation process? Is it when you're listening to a concept, does your mind go to because this worked, therefore this will also work, or your metric is I've not seen this, I want to see this?
That could be, but this has worked, this has not worked. I mean, a love story can be told in 20 different ways. There'll be one that grabs you. So it'll be I think this is the one I want to back. A crime story, there'll be 20. I mean, we get some millions a year, but I think we pick and choose the ones that grab us and say, this is a well-told story. This story is being well told. A man killing another man is a premise. The way he's killed and the way he's caught is the story. So you feel, yes, that is what I would back.
Now, my last question to all of you, and I'll start with Nimisha. We know the platforms have exploded, and especially COVID has sort of accelerated. Do you think we have enough writing talent to support the content? And as an association and as writers individually, what more can writers here do? Because in films, we used to always have that complaint, कि writer nahi hai. What more and what processes and what things can we do to sort of develop more writing talent? Because obviously there's an explosion of content.
We definitely need a lot of writers. We definitely need a lot of writers writing great Bibles. I mean, if you ask me, I would any day pick an original over an adaptation. But also, I'm slightly scared to say this here, but don't be? Okay, I'm told don't be. But the truth of the matter is that I really get so many pitches, so many Bibles, and most of them are extremely underwhelming, either in terms of, not enough work having been put, not enough things thought through, and this whole thing of, I have a great idea, you tell us, do you want to put it in development? I mean, actually, if there was like a real tangible, more than advice, a suggestion, actually also a request, because we really need good content I could make here, is it would be that, if you believe that that idea is really strong, work on it more, and, and then sort of start pitching it. Because what happens is, sure, I mean, you will blame others to not being able to see the potential in that idea, and I get it, but it's really tough because it's all in your head. So I think one thing I could say is that we could definitely get better at pakawing that great idea a lot more, because also characters, right? I mean, I was listening to the last session when Raj and TK were also talking, what really works for a good series are the characters, right? Now, to have that, those shades in a character, it is not very often that you get to read unpredictable characters. So again, I mean, that is something that OTT has provided as a great opportunity, and I hope as a creative ecosystem, we're able to sort of make use of it, because, yeah, so that's what I'd love to read more.
Nikkhil, what do you feel can be done to improve writing talent?
I think so I'm just going to use our example. I think day before yesterday at the awards, the best original screenplay was won by two writers from MA Entertainment, Yash Chatija and Anushka Mehrotra. They had never written before. Full marks to Aparna, who basically believed when I said that they'll write it. They'll write Mumbai Diaries. And they wrote it, right? They had never written before. So I think that it's the duty, It should be like a religion for production houses to invest in writing rooms, in writers, to mentor writers, to have senior writers coming in to work with writers. And it's because it's exploding, right? Everybody has an idea today, and why not? Why not, right? I mean, you can, I know films and I know shows that have been conceived on basis of Instagram posts. Somebody wrote an Instagram post and somebody read it and said, wow. So there's Humans of Bombay and these kind of, wonderful platforms where some incredible writing is happening, right? And by people who are not writers, who are just pouring their heart out, and boom, something is being made from there. So I think that it and it has to happen, right? And I think that we must put aside a large chunk of the money that people are making to encourage writers. I think it's very important.
But I think money with OTTs, money is not an excuse anymore. I at least definitely feel that a certain amount of financial sort of benefits have come in because of OTT into development.
Absolutely, there's no question about it, right? I mean, whether the writer had to basically finish work in 2 months' time because he has to keep the chula running at home. The great thing that has happened with the platforms and the OTT platforms is that they say, listen, hold on, we'll pay you for 1 whole year. Ab likho. Please, because a good show is written very well. So write karo, So I think that's very liberating, and that allows the writer to feel that I don't have to worry. My children can go to school, and I can pay for the bills, and I can concentrate on something that I can really, really nurture it, and I can really, really work on it, and so I think that's a given. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Deepak, what do you feel about?
That comes to mind very often, that writer to hai nahi. But there are many writers. What I feel is lacking in our writing community is the technique, which is a very well-honed. See, finally, this, whatever we are discussing here, comes under a great umbrella of finance. Somebody has to pay money to make it. He has to recover that money. So what the Americans have done, they've made it into a fine art. They'll break the rules once in a while, they'll make something else, but but to churn out great writing, like actually, if you see soap operas in India, daily soaps, have a technique. 7th minute, something will happen, but they want the people to come back after the ad, so it's a compulsion. They have to write to that. What we find in a lot of stuff that is coming to us, that it is going at a glacial pace. Character ban raha hai, kab abhi episode khatam hone aaya, then they start thinking, ganti maar do, kuch kar do, So I think there's no harm in learning from the techniques being used by other people. If you like a certain show, pull out those scripts and go through it. You will realize that they catch you at very vital moments of your viewing experience. It is not just you come to my level and do it. There's a science to it. That is one. The second very disappointing thing which I would like to share with all of you is we get very shabbily written stuff. The idea is very good, but when you start, now imagine, put yourselves in the shoes of a commissioning editor who's got 35 scripts to read over the next 2 months. And he says, oh, this is a great idea, let me start reading it. Then you start seeing grammatical errors, character names not being consistent. Things like that turn off a person who's assessing your script. So that is only your doing. If you're careless about that, then it's your doing. Then you can't expect कि मेरी story इतनी अच्छी थी, उसको समझ में नहीं आई, character का नाम ही नहीं समझ में आ रहा था, तो अब story कहाँ से समझ में आए? You start off with a handicap. How the West does it, let me tell you. My daughter was in film school in Boston. 3 mistakes, they stop reading your paper. First 3 mistakes. Whether it is location inconsistency, character names, grammatical mistake, they will stop reading the paper, you give it again. That is how, that drills those kids into check. She tells me I used to spend more time rereading my material than I took writing it. Just to make sure I'm not making a damn mistake. So when the person reads it, he gets into the story, into the flow, into the character. They're not something popping out. So I think please be very careful about what you all submit and how you all submit it. The less mistakes that are there in it, the person will be more conducive to saying, yes, this is what I want to do. Right? So that largely that is my gyan.
No, and that's very useful because even I, sometimes I get not that many opportunities, but sometimes people send me scripts, etc., material to read, and you always feel that if you don't care so much about your material, then why should I care about your material? So that I think is a very important aspect that you've taken. So with this, all the questions that I had written down are finished. I cannot work without a script. So I have nothing else to ask. But if there's anything specifically that you guys feel that I haven't touched upon, anything that you would sort of want to bring in, otherwise I'll see if there are any questions in our...
Yeah, please.
So apparently I've covered all the audience questions because I have deep insight into everybody's mind. So thank you very much. I hope this was useful for everybody. And I hope this OTT revolution continues and we can all sort of benefit from it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Saket, it's never over until the fat man sings. So here I am back again to embarrass you. But anyway, my compliments actually. Seldom do you find minds that occupy a stage in front of a screenwriting audience that not only give you creative advice, which was extremely useful and practical, but also what I would call industrial insights, that the perspective from the other side, that both they and you want the same thing, is to make good shows, okay, to make sure that the product which is out there on the screen is engaging and entertaining, which is what even the audience wants. So all three of us want the same thing. And yet, from their point of view, there are certain roadblocks which they encounter, which I think we should be extremely mindful about. And I'm underlining the extremely. I'm just going to touch upon the last three things. I mean, the last each thing that we heard from each of these three personalities here. What Nimisha spoke about is also the need to make sure that the entire dramatic potential, the story potential of that particular idea is sucked out. We do half-baked work. We are in a rush. We are satisfied sometimes too soon with what we have done without really taking an honest magnifying glass to it. And that's extremely important. These people read dozens and dozens of scripts, wo jhat se pakad lete hain. Okay, so you have not written as many scripts, obviously, as they have read, perhaps in a week. So it's extremely important to heed what she said, that please continue to develop it until you feel you sucked out every potential that you can at that moment from it, which means do your best that you can. Even what Nikkhil spoke about, that it's not about looking for what has already been done or something which follows a particular trend or precedent, what he called also data, but to look at what is an idea that firstly grabs you. Does it make you sit up? Does it make you leap out of your bed the next morning and leap onto the chair and nail your butt to the chair, or that what? F-O-K-B-O-S, that impels you to do that, as Raj was repeatedly pointing out. That's because if it grabs you, it's quite likely that it is going to grab them and therefore the audience once again. And then finally, what also Deepak spoke about, which I personally cannot emphasize enough, your presentation, your communicating. You need them to take your work seriously and you seriously. But if you've written it shabbily, if you've written it carelessly, if you've not been mindful even about simple things like language and spelling mistakes and formatting errors, I'm sorry. I mean, I am, entirely on your side. You send me a script like that, I will not read it. You send me a WhatsApp like that, I will delete it. Because you're communicating with the other person, you please jolly well respect the other person's mind and time and effort. He's spending time looking at your work, okay? And then he's going to give you feedback even if he rejects it. But he's reading your work. I think some respect is in order from our side on that. We are, today I received WhatsApps from writers, and some of them from amongst you with some requests, some questions, some meeting thing. Language to theek karo yaar. Spelling mistake, capital letters, kuch to karo yaar. You're asking me to read it, why should I read this? So please, अंग्रेजी में लिख रहे हो तो अंग्रेजी आपकी शुद्ध होनी चाहिए. नहीं आता है किसी और से एक बार रीराइट करवा लो, कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता. हिंदी में लिख रहे हो तो फिर सही तरीके से हिंदी लिखो. So we have to be mindful of this entirely. So I am truly very grateful, personally and on behalf of SWA, of course, for the time that you have given and for the attention that you have paid to every single question that Saket asked. And it was exhaustive, Saket, I must say. So it wasn't exhausting, though generally you do make it exhausting, but this time you didn't. I think Hindi medium and your talented writer wife has taught you how to be engaging. Yeah. So good, let's give credit where it's due, okay? Some people are asking me, who's his wife, who's his wife? Okay, his wife is Zeenat Lakhani, for God's sake, she's the one who writes with him, and he follows her writing, and then inserts his name there as co-writer. That's what a lot of directors do. Every good director does that, कि idea तो मैंने दिया था, ये तो मैंने बोला था, feedback तो मैंने दिया था, okay? But anyway, jokes aside, Saket is one of our absolute strong pillars of SWA and has never failed to stand by every initiative that we take, and he's a brave person also. One last word for the three people sitting here, our guests. All that you have taken, yes, is absolutely accepted 100% because everything what you said made sense to me. I'm going to put forth something from our side now. Deepak, Nikkhil, Nimisha, we are at the moment also suffering some pain at the one-sided contracts that we have been receiving from corporate houses, from platforms, production houses, etc. And we would like to sit across the table and air our views. Already, I think, Nikkhil, you had sent, we had this meeting at the Guild, and I think a representative from your side came. I don't know whether it was Ashni or whether it was Chandrima who was representing you. You remember that? I think perhaps your partner sent person. So we would like to address this. And all three of you are creatively sensitive people. Nikkhil though is actually, he straddles both sides. So it should be easy for us to make ourselves understood there. And what we're asking for, Deepak, is not that, okay, now we do it one-sided from our side. Obviously not. I mean, we've been around long enough and we're professionals. So it's important that at least some degree of concern that, once again, Deepak, that we have. You see, we would like to make you aware of that and then have a dialogue on that. You were saying. No, Mike, can somebody please? Yeah, it's on.
As this industry is evolving and we are, writers are becoming more and more important, the contracts have to, of course, reflect both sides. I mean, I was surprised that we were hiring this writer from the US, and when his agent sent the contract, there was, of course, the writing fee, and there was something called the rejection fee, which was a percentage of the writing fee. So currently what happens is all writers think, मैंने तो लिख दिया, अब मुझे पूरे पैसे दो. But if the person you are writing for, who is paying you, doesn't like the idea, where does that leave him? So for this machinery to move in a professional way, I think we have to take the best of what the world has left behind for us to take from and make our our creative force professional. Nahi acha laga to aap rejection, I'll move ahead. There's another big concept which we are also using in a big way, are script doctors now. That somebody writes something and some writer sitting in Alaska just goes through it and he's going through it with we did a lovely one on we were doing this show on the Mughals and we sent it to a foreign script doctor. He said, dramatically not working. Because I am in love with Dara Shikoh and I'm spending time, utilizing him. For him, that episode was rubbish. He said, it's not engaging me at all. Because he was not looking at it from a perspective of somebody who's lived that history. He was looking at it as a dramatic structure. So I think we should engage and talk.
Yeah, point absolutely taken, and I understand this. All I'm saying is that I think, because, as you said, we're professionals, so what the transaction which is taking place, it's an exchange. Okay, the writer is offering something which you need. You have something to offer in terms of getting the film made and giving him credit and money which she needs. Okay, so I think perhaps each other's concerns can be in a very professional, calm way addressed across the table, and whatever is the best solution possible. What I can assure you, because I do lead the team on the contracts committee, that I think we are very mindful of the concerns that you people have. And I think we have given enough thought to it, and I have, responsibly. Nevertheless, there may be things which we need to still discuss and work out something. So without affecting your considerations, we feel it is possible to address ours. That's what I'm saying, so that the best work is possible. So may I take it in principle as a given, Nikkhil, that we can come across, and then we will have a dialogue on this, yeah? Okay. Yeah. You I'm counting on, Nikkhil.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, I mean, usually we don't have direct writer's contract, but I am extremely happy to go through what you're talking about and enforce certain things from the platform's end to make sure that producers follow.
Super. Can we, there you go.